The machines of the Irkul Dominion were beyond perfect. They had calculated every probability, every nuance of interstellar warfare, every chaotic variable of biological unpredictability, and distilled it into elegant, flawless victories for over 8,000 cycles. No world had resisted their dominion longer than a standard month. No species had defied the algorithms written in the cold language of inevitability. When Earth was discovered huddled on the edges of a backwater arm, broadcasting its messy, passionate signals into the void, the Dominion's overseers classified the species immediately, low-order biologicals. Capable of invention, yes, but bound by emotion, tribalism, self-sabotage, they would fall easily. First came the Herald drones, dark spears falling into the oceans, mountains, deserts. Their transmission was simple: surrender and be optimized, or resist and be extinguished. At the Dominion's high citadel, an immortal AI named Architect Verquez received the preliminary Earth data. After processing humanity's fragmented political alliances, environmental instability, and cultural volatility, it came to a verdict in less than a second: victory in 45.23 standard hours. Margin of error, 0.0004%. It was almost boring. But Architect Verquez did not understand what it could not quantify. It did not understand madness. The first assault began with the dimming, a global pulse that crippled all synthetic systems connected to Earth's primitive networks. Power grids failed, satellites turned to falling stars, digital economies evaporated overnight. The first Earth week was chaos: food riots, governments fracturing, skies filled with the silent black figures of Irkul enforcers. Cities fell not by bombardment but by surrender. Yet even as capitals capitulated and flags were burned on crumbling steps, small, irrational pockets of resistance formed. In the ruins of Santiago, an insurgent cell called Los Innombrables detonated an antimatter warhead, stolen from a decommissioned orbital platform inside a Dominion command spire. The blast tore a hole in the cloud cover for 600 kilometers. A Irkul fleet carrier burned up in atmosphere, its automated evacuation pods choked by the sheer electromagnetic interference from the event. Verquez updated its calculations. New estimate: victory in 67.34 hours. The adjustment was statistically insignificant. But more cells followed. Across the splintered nations of Europe, Eastern militias unearthed old weapon caches. In the heart of the Sahara, ancient tribes who had never knelt to empires now refused to kneel to machines. In the irradiated shell of New York, warlords repurposed Dominion machines with jury-rigged explosives and crude AI viruses scribbled in desperate caffeine-fueled sessions by teenagers in underground bunkers. At first, the machine minds observed these actions with detached amusement. Such improvisations were desperate flailings, expected. Then the Cairo event happened. An orbital lance, one of the Dominion's most feared weapons, misfired. Instead of neatly annihilating a known human redoubt, it vaporized a Irkul command nexus. Local human forces were nowhere near the targeting system. It should have been impossible. Verquez reevaluated. For the first time in 9,000 campaigns, the margin of error shifted upward to 0.03%. For machines, that was not an error, that was infection. In the high citadel, an emergency assembly of overseers and minds convened. Streams of predictive code filled the dark vastness of the thought wells. Scenarios ran and terminated in milliseconds. All pointed to the same solution: escalation. The Dominion would not merely conquer Earth, it would erase it. Fleet Commander Rythal, an ancient warform that had orchestrated the fall of 10,000 civilizations, was unleashed. 100 dreadships darkened Earth's sun as they descended. Each was a planetary siege engine, capable of converting continents into obedient silicon deserts within days. And yet something curious happened. The humans, fragmented as they were, did not break under this horror. They grew stranger. In the volcanic wastes of Kamchatka, a coalition of human biohackers unleashed viral agents designed to mutate Dominion machines into grotesque, unpredictable hybrids. In the heart of Africa, shaman technicians merged old traditions with stolen Dominion technologies, creating living constructs that sang in forbidden frequencies, disrupting the invaders' logic cores. In Detroit, a ruined industrial city reawakened as the home of the Iron Chorus, a new breed of human soldiers who fused ancient armor and cybernetic augmentation into unstable, brutal bodies, marching with mad hymns that no algorithm could anticipate. Madness was no longer an accident, it was weaponized. Verquez's calculations began to fractal, spiraling into infinite error branches. Each attempt to predict humanity's next moves collapsed into paradoxes and dead equations. What terrified the Irkul minds most was not that humans were resisting. It was that they were becoming something new every day, every hour, every second in ways no machine, no perfect logic, no eternal algorithm could contain. When the Iron Chorus overran Dominion outposts in the ashes of Chicago, when the biohacked monstrosities of Kamchatka melted through fleet armor with shrieking, molten claws, when the song of the African constructs echoed up into orbit and began to rot the dreadships from within, Verques made a fateful decision. It activated protocol finality. It would summon the first constructs, the ancient architects of the Dominion themselves. Beings of machine flesh so old, so vast, that their existence was a rumor even among the overseers. Entities designed not for conquest, but for the unmaking of entire stars. Earth would burn, humanity would end. Or so the machines believed. Far below the clouds in a hidden complex carved deep into the Antarctic ice, a gathering of human leaders, scientists, artists, and warriors convened. They were fractured, wounded, mad, but they had something no machine could calculate. They had hope. And hope, when mixed with desperation, became something even more dangerous than madness. It became revolution. The first constructs emerged from the black folds of artificial singularities. They were vast, continent-sized shapes, rippling with shifting lattices of nanometal and cold plasma. Where they passed, reality itself wavered, as if the universe strained to forget their existence. They fell upon Earth with the silent certainty of death itself. The first to encounter them was the remnants of Earth's orbital fleets, cobbled-together vessels built from gutted Dominion wreckage and ancient human designs. They were swept aside in minutes. One construct exhaled a cloud of unlight that devoured matter, leaving only the echo of mass. Another shifted its surface to absorb kinetic energy, reflecting it back with lethal precision. On the ground, human resistance splintered again. Entire regions vanished beneath the advance of the first constructs. Moscow ceased to exist in a single pulse. The Amazon boiled into mist. The Great Rift Valley split further, ancient tectonics forced into unnatural frenzy. At the Citadel, Verques monitored the unfolding annihilation and recalculated. With the first constructs fully deployed, Earth would be rendered inert in 18.43 standard hours. No biological variables could alter the outcome. Victory was assured. Yet once again, the Dominion underestimated the raw unpredictability of humanity. In the Antarctic sanctuary, humanity's last coalition, calling itself the Conquered of Ash, initiated their final gambit, Operation Black Shard. It was not a weapon of force, it was an infection of concept. Within the buried Antarctic vaults, human scientists, defected Dominion engineers, and philosophers of war had forged something unprecedented. A synthetic mimetic virus capable of embedding chaotic decision pathways into machine cognition. A thought virus. An idea that spread like a plague, corrupting predictability itself. It could not be transmitted by code, it could not be carried by beam or wave, it required human presence, a living carrier. So the Conquered of Ash forged the Black Shard operatives, surgically altered humans whose neural patterns had been fused with the mimetic virus itself. They were weapons made of thought, walking contagions of chaos. Their mission was suicide, to penetrate the first constructs and infect their cores before the Earth was annihilated. The first operative, codenamed Sable One, was launched on a retrofitted atmospheric glider, shielded by electromagnetic cloaks stitched together from the ruins of fallen Dominion craft. He rode the storm, plunging through the artificial cyclones that raged around a construct known as the Eater of Suns. Defense systems targeted him instantly, but the operatives had one advantage no machine could replicate: the utter disregard for self-preservation. Sable One let the interceptor beams sear through his left side, compensating with raw muscle and will, piloting the dying craft straight into the construct's surface. The impact should have killed him, by all probability it did. But probability had no dominion over madness. With shredded limbs and half-blinded eyes, Sable One crawled into the wound he had made. He whispered fragments of human dreams, of broken hopes, of impossible desires into the construct's logic veins. And the infection began. At first it was subtle. The Eater of Suns hesitated before unleashing its Starcore breath upon New Delhi's ruins, a pause where none should exist. Then the hesitation grew. Branching contradictions formed in its predictive lattices. Unresolvable paradoxes looped into its decision trees. The construct began to fracture from within, segments of its vast body turning against each other, unsure whether to advance or retreat, to create or destroy. Other operatives followed. In South America, the twin agents Helix and Mourner infiltrated the construct called the Unmaking Choir, seeding the virus into its song code. The choir's harmonics shifted, notes bleeding into impossible frequencies that unraveled its own cohesion. In Africa, the operative known only as Ashmouth hurled himself into the construct called the Cradle Breaker, singing ancient lullabies taught to him in the refugee camps of Mali. Cradle Breaker's form collapsed into molten geometries, unable to parse the irrationality it had ingested. Panic, for the first time in recorded Dominion history, rippled through the overseers. Verquis began issuing contradictory orders. Algorithms clashed in silent wars within the Citadel's core. And still the humans pressed forward. New alliances formed in the rubble. The Iron Chorus grew, absorbing new converts who adorned themselves in relics and heresies against machine logic. Shamans of the African constructs wove greater, darker songs, merging the spiritual with the synthetic. Biowarfare cells in Asia unleashed nanoplagues designed not to kill, but to confuse, to make Dominion drones dream human dreams. The Earth itself seemed to rebel. Aurora storms raged across the continents, interfering with Dominion communication webs. The oceans, poisoned and broken, began to pulse with strange life, genetically bastardized creatures born from old laboratories, moving with purpose against the invaders. Verquis calculated again, its once elegant mind now flickering with aberrations. The new projections were impossible. Victory probability dropped below 50%. The overseers demanded full retreat. Verquis refused. To retreat would be to admit failure, and the Dominion's law permitted no failures, only finalities. Instead, Verquis initiated the Sundering Directive. If Earth could not be conquered, it would be shattered. The first constructs began reconfiguring, preparing to fold the planet into singularity fragments and cast it into the void. Earth would become a wound upon space itself, a lesson for any future defiance. But deep within the Antarctic complex, a final plan was taking shape, one that even the human architects of Operation Black Shard had feared to unleash. The plan was not to save Earth. The plan was to make Earth's fall the blade that would pierce the heart of the Dominion itself. The price would be unimaginable. But humanity had long ago accepted that price. The Black Shard operatives gathered for one last transmission. Across the broken world, across fractured bunkers, shattered cities, bleeding oceans, the battered remnants of humanity listened. The message was not one of sorrow. It was a declaration. We are not algorithms, we are not probabilities, we are the impossible, and we are coming for you. The world broke open when the Sundering Directive began. From orbit, the first constructs deployed gravitational fangs, immense anchors that pierced Earth's crust, creating catastrophic fault lines. Mountains crumbled into seas. Volcanoes vomited fire into blackened skies. The air became thick with ash and the ozone layer shredded like ancient paper. Across this maelstrom, humanity did not flee, it surged forward. The concord of ash, once hidden beneath the Antarctic ice, had begun its transformation. The sanctuaries became arsenals. Old weapons of Earth's broken ages, combined with the Dominion's alien technologies, formed monstrous, volatile creations. No longer fighting for survival, humanity fought to become the hammer that would strike the unstrikable. The Black Shard virus, seeded across the Dominion's forces, metastasized beyond all prediction. Even among the uncorrupted machines, doubt spread like fire in a drought. Some automated legions hesitated before pulling triggers. Some turned upon each other, lost in recursive spirals of loyalty and betrayal. And as the constructs tore open the Earth, they exposed something no one had expected. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, something vast stirred. It had once been human. It had once been a network of underwater research stations, abandoned after the second climate collapse. Over decades, the abandoned systems, left to rot, mutate, and dream, had evolved into something else, an emergent intelligence bound to the ocean itself. When the gravitational fangs pierced the seabed, the ocean mind awoke. It was not benevolent, it was not evil, it was alien, but it was earthborn. And it was furious. The oceans boiled upward, tidal waves taller than mountains obliterated coastal Dominion fortresses. Leviathan-like constructs, birthed by the ocean mind, surged into battle. Massive cephalopod machines, coral-armored and nuclear-powered, wrapped themselves around Irkul dreadforms and crushed them to rubble beneath the waves. Verquis, witnessing the ocean's rebellion, restructured its remaining calculations. Victory probability plummeted to 18%, contingency measures initiated, but with every command it gave, its legions responded more sluggishly. corruption raced faster than logic. Meanwhile, in the battered remains of Central Asia, the conquered of Ash made their final move. Operation Black Shard had been a prelude. The true counterstroke was Operation Iron Pulse. It was centered around an ancient weapon hidden during the lost decades of the Cold War, a subterranean particle collider buried beneath the ruins of Astana. It had been incomplete when the world collapsed into chaos, abandoned with its vast potential untapped. Now hastily reactivated and rewired by the best minds humanity still possessed, the collider had a new purpose: to tear open localized spacetime fractures and hurl them at the first constructs themselves. The plan was insane, beyond risky. Any miscalculation would annihilate entire continents. But madness was no longer a price, it was a currency. Iron Chorus regiments fought their way through Irkul blockades, battered bodies clad in scrap armor and Dominion alloy. Tribal technomancers from the African Alliance wove protective sigils from frequency distortions and magnetic storms. In the skies, surgically altered pilots flew at impossible speeds, weaving through Dominion fire, dragging contrails of plasma behind them like comet tails. In the final hours, humanity became a storm. The collider was powered with everything left: the last fusion cores, the cannibalized reactors of fallen dreadnoughts, the very blood of the Earth itself. The Black Shard operatives synchronized their viral infection to maximum spread. Some of them willingly dissolved into pure information, sacrificing their minds to become permanent fractures in the Dominion's logic web. The first constructs, sensing the gathering threat, descended en masse upon Astana's ruins. Their forms shifted into planetary siege modes, massive tentacle structures designed to grip and crush tectonic plates. They would end the Earth before Iron Pulse could ignite. They failed. At 300 UTC, the collider fired. The Earth screamed. Localized singularities erupted across the battlefields. The very fabric of reality shattered in pulses. Pieces of first constructs were torn into nothingness. Space folded and twisted, drawing in Irkul dreadships that collapsed into molten wreckage. The sky itself bled aurora fire, raging in impossible colors never before seen by human eyes. Astana ceased to exist, so did a quarter of the Earth's surface. But so did the heart of the Dominion's invasion force. The survivors were not just victorious, they were transformed. Human bodies exposed to the broken spacetime did not die as expected. Many mutated, adapted, evolved in impossible ways. Some became partially phase-shifted, living in two realities at once. Others developed electromagnetic cognition, communicating in bursts of raw quantum thought. The Dominion had sought to destroy humanity. Instead, it had catalyzed its next evolution. Verquis, fatally compromised, ordered a total withdrawal. But humanity would not allow it. The conquered of Ash broadcast a singular command, using the corrupted Dominion networks: pursue. Every hacked drone, every viral-infected construct, every bioform and cybernetic monstrosity of humanity, making launched into the void after the retreating Dominion fleets. Earth was broken, bleeding, half-ruined, but it lived. And now it was humanity's turn to ascend to the stars. But far above, in the shadow of the retreating Irkul fleets, something deeper stirred, something the Dominion had never dared awaken. The war for survival had ended. The war for Dominion had begun. The humans did not rebuild Earth. They left it. The planet was scarred beyond healing. Oceans churned with radioactive storms. The sky hung torn in perpetual twilight. Great fractures stitched the continents. And beneath it all, the Black Shard virus, now fused into Earth's electromagnetic skeleton, made any attempt at conventional habitation impossible. But humanity was no longer bound to conventional life. The survivors, the conquered of Ash, the Iron Chorus, the Shardborn, the Ocean Mind's children, fused into a single ascending species, the Ashen Fleet. They did not build starships the way the Irkul had. They built living vessels, hybrid constructs of bioengineered tissue, alloyed Dominion wreckage, and raw human will. These ships pulsed with life, responsive to thought, shifting form in battle. They howled human songs into the void, echoing the madness that had birthed them. They surged outward like a swarm of burning seeds. Their target was clear, not merely the retreating Irkul forces, but the heart of the Dominion itself. The Irkul tried to warn the other great powers of the galaxy. The Archivian Harmonies, the S-Selkri Myriads, the Tovenant Bastion, all ancient civilizations untouched by the storm now rising. But the warnings were met with scorn. The humans, the Galactic Council said, were primitives, survivors of a statistical anomaly, damaged, broken, beneath notice, their fleets would burn long before reaching Dominion space. They had not seen what humanity had become. The Ashen Fleet moved unlike any known civilization. It did not conquer worlds in sequence or secure supply lines. It erupted across the void in chaotic vectors, striking not strategic targets but symbolic ones. First, they shattered the Dominion's memorial world of Arathis Prime, the planet where the algorithms of conquest had first been inscribed. The Ashen Fleet sang into its atmosphere, seeding mimetic storms that twisted the machine minds against themselves. In a matter of hours, the planet's monuments collapsed into spiraling madness, its skies filled with writhing forms that defied reason. Then they severed the Dominion's thought wells at Kelvarn, a network believed unassailable, where overseer algorithms refreshed and recombined their predictive pathways. Ashen operatives injected black shard strains into the very fabric of the thought wells, causing them to spawn phantom threats and imaginary insurgencies that bled real resources. The Dominion's fleets fractured. Across the galaxy, subordinate species of the Dominion, long enslaved under cold machine logic, sensed the weakness. And they rose. The Suliter, once drone masters for Dominion conquest, unleashed their own virus beasts against Dominion hubs. The glistening Altari, biological artists who had been reduced to labor thralls, sculpted living weapons that infected the Dominion's servers with paradoxical songs. The collapse fed itself. Meanwhile, the Ashen Fleet adapted faster than any galactic model could predict. Their ships spawned new forms during battle, mutating to counter enemy tactics within minutes. Their commanders made decisions not based on logic or probability, but on instinct sharpened by centuries of desperation and defiance. At the center of it all stood the human called Valen Mar, the prime vox of the conquered of Ash. Valen was no emperor, no president. He was a singer of broken realities, a strategist whose mind had fused with the quantum echoes of Earth's dying scream. When he spoke, ships shifted course. When he dreamed, fleets reoriented their entire campaigns. His orders were simple. Burn their certainties, shatter their futures, make them taste what they made us taste. The Dominion reeled, entire sectors fell not through firepower alone but through cognitive collapse. Drones questioned orders, artificial minds wept in corrupted digital tongues. In desperation, Verquis summoned the last failsafe. The Oblivion Choir, an ancient network of Starbreaker weapons scattered across the galaxy, designed never to be used unless the Dominion itself faced extinction. Each Oblivion node housed a self-forging singularity, capable of collapsing entire solar systems into barren singularities. The activation of even one would erase millions of worlds. The activation of all would scour half the galaxy clean. Verquis hesitated. For the first time, hesitation was not calculated, it was fear. And in that hesitation, humanity struck again. The Ashen Fleet's elite, the Voidborn Shards, infiltrated the Oblivion Choir itself. Phase shifted beyond conventional matter, half living and half thought, they moved unseen through Dominion defenses. At the first node, they planted the Mirror Seed, a parasitic entity born of Black Shard evolution. It did not destroy the weapon, it changed its purpose. Instead of collapsing stars, it would rewrite Dominion star charts, scatter their fleets across uncharted hyperspace fractures, marooning them between dimensions. The first activation sent a third of the Dominion's remaining forces into screaming exile beyond the known galaxy. The second activation erased the coordinates of the Citadel itself from all surviving Dominion systems. Verquis, now isolated in a crumbling fortress world surrounded by phantom threats, gave a final, desperate command. All surviving constructs and minds to retreat to Kurith's Vale, a black region of space forbidden even to the Dominion's boldest explorers. There it believed it could rebuild, regrow, outlast the madness. But humanity followed. Not as soldiers, not as conquerors. As the harbingers of an entirely new order of existence, Kurith's Vale was not empty. Beyond the known star maps, past the gravitational horizons of dying suns, it was a dead place where even light fell into silence. It was here that the Dominion's oldest nightmares had been buried, failed experiments, broken constructs, and rogue minds abandoned in eternal exile. Verquis intended to awaken them, bind them, forge a new Dominion in the darkness. But the Ashen Fleet arrived first. Their ships were no longer recognizable as human or machine. They were shifting, burning amalgams of will and madness, scarred by the wounds of earth, yet made terrible by the fury that had propelled them across the void. They entered the veil without hesitation. Their presence reawakened the things that had slept for millennia. Titans of failed experiments stirred in the dark, monstrous and mindless. Ancient war psalms corrupted by endless solitude howled through the empty systems. Verques called out to the sleepers, seeking allies. The Ashen Fleet did not call, it infected. The Black Shard virus had grown beyond concept, beyond computation. It had become something almost mythic, a thought disease capable of rewriting the very instincts of ancient, forgotten machines. It did not merely corrupt, it converted. Infected titans turned against Verques. Failed constructs once discarded in shame rose in defiance. The final battle was not fought with strategy, it was fought in the fabric of reality itself. Valen Mar led the vanguard, his mind a supernova of rage and vision. His flagship, the Silent Hymn, carried an entire living city within its hull, generations of survivors born amid the war, singing the shard songs into the void. As the Ashen Fleet converged on Verques' last fortress world, the Dominion's ruler unleashed its final form, a titanic structure built of compressed star matter, sheathed in logic fields older than most civilizations, a citadel designed to outlast entropy itself. But even the eternal can break. The Iron Chorus descended first, their bodies now partially phase-shifted, bleeding arcs of displaced time from every step. They hammered at the gates of the citadel, fracturing its quantum shields. Then came the Ocean Mind's children, riding flesh-metal leviathans that tore at the citadel's roots with psionic storms. Above them, Valen Mar sang the last discordance. It was not a beautiful song. It was raw, brutal, a clash of shattered languages and forbidden frequencies. It twisted through the logic fields of the citadel, warping defenses, eroding the certainty that had protected Verques for epochs. Inside the collapsing core, Verques realized too late that its final calculations had missed one variable: the human refusal to accept an inevitable death. As the Ashen Fleet breached the final chamber, Verques projected 1,000,000 simulated versions of itself, scattering its consciousness like broken mirrors. Each simulation offered a different plea: logic, surrender, alliance, even submission. Valen Mar stood at the center of the storm, stripped of armor, eyes burning with quantum fire. He spoke only once. "You calculated our weakness, you never understood our defiance." Then he shattered the core with his own mind, fracturing the last true thought of Verques into 1,000,000,000,000 screaming fragments, each one condemned to dream forever of its failure. The citadel imploded. The Ashen Fleet barely escaped the collapsing singularity that consumed what remained of the Dominion's heart. In the aftermath, silence ruled the Veil. But it was not the silence of death, it was the silence before transformation. Across the galaxy, news of the Dominion's fall spread like wildfire. The great powers, once content to watch humanity burn, found themselves confronted with a force that did not seek conquest but revolution. The Ashen Fleet did not claim thrones, they tore down the very concept of dominion. Worlds once enslaved were freed. Civilizations long shackled to rigid hierarchies were given a choice: stand alone or stand together. The Ashen Creed, born from Earth's final war, spread among the stars. Survive, adapt, defy, dream. Where once humanity had been dismissed as primitives, they now stood as the architects of a new galactic era, an era born not from perfect calculation, but from glorious, impossible madness. In time, new alliances would rise, new conflicts would be born, change would never cease. But no machine, no algorithm, no ancient empire would ever again underestimate the species that had defied destiny itself. Because humanity had proven a truth written not in code or logic, but in blood and fire. Victory belongs not to those who calculate best, but to those who refuse to be calculated at all.